Bruce Wayne with another one of my amazing stories. So today I'm going to tell you about my trip to Mexico. So while I was living in Hawaii, about 2003, probably about June, July, somewhere around there, April, May, June, July, somewhere around that time, I met a new girl, and we were getting along very well, and I wanted to impress her, so I wanted to take her around the world. So I offered to take her around the world, but she said she didn't have the time available in her schedule to do that. So, I asked her, well, where would you want to go? How much time do you have? And she said about a month. And I said, where can we go for about a month? And she said specifically that she wanted to go to Mexico. And I thought, Mexico for an entire month? Wouldn't you rather go to a lot of other countries? And she said no. She's always wanted to go to Mexico for a longer period of time. She had been to Mexico a couple of times and she wanted to go back, and she wanted to show me how great it was. So we agreed on Mexico, and before you know it, we're on a plane to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, which she had been before years gone by, and a place that I'd never been to myself. So when we got to Mexico, and we got specifically to Puerto Vallarta, something really strange happened. We didn't realize that there was a gay pride holiday, and so when it was time to check in, we were told that all the hotels in that area was filled up, and the only hotel that was available was a gay hotel. Now, to correct that, I'm not sure if it was a gay pride holiday or not, or if it was just a holiday, but when I looked at my schedule recently, I didn't notice any holidays around that time. So the only thing I can think of is that there might have been a specific pride holiday around that time. And so going to this hotel and being told that it was a gay hotel was a strange concept to me, because I'd lived in Boston for a long time, and they certainly had a very large, I guess they call it now LGBTQ plus community. But back then, we just called it the gay community, or it wasn't even LGBT at the time, I don't believe, or if it wasn't very commonly known then. And so I lived in Boston for a very long time, and while I was there certainly was a very large gay community there in multiple neighborhoods. In fact, I remember going down to P-Town, which is Provincetown, but they call it P-Town, down by Martha's Vineyard down by Cape Cod, in that general area there. And down there it was a lot of people went by and visited P-Town. P-Town was primarily run by the LGBTQ plus community. And while I'm telling the story, I may use the word gay community a lot. I just mean LGBTQ plus, whatever the correct terminology is right now. But I'm going to reference it based on what it was called back then, since we're kind of doing the setting of the story back then. So back in P-Town, that was a gay community, and they ran the city very well there, or the town very well. And it was beautiful. It was very well architecturally done. There's lots of stores and shops, and the people there, nobody bothered you. It wasn't like they came up and harassed you because you were a straight guy. In fact, lots of straight people were there in P-Town to visit, because it was just a beautiful town to visit. You didn't see a lot of obnoxious, openly, what would you say, open, affection in a way that you didn't see people making out. And that would be annoying, even if it was a straight community. You just didn't want to see that, and it was frowned upon in P-Town as well. So when you went there, you didn't feel like there's anything out of the ordinary. Everybody was just very respectful, like all the other places I'd been to, and all the people who I'd worked with up until that point, and friends and people that I was familiar with that also, were respectful to the fact that I was straight, they were gay, and what was a big fucking deal about it. Let you live your life, I live my life, no one gives a shit. And that's basically my attitude. So when we got to Puerto Vallarta and they said the gay hotel, it was very strange to me, but I said, oh, well, whatever. So they asked me, would it be okay for us to stay there? And I said, well, yeah, sure. Why would that be a big deal? So we booked our room. We came in late that night, as well, so we didn't have the other option because they were suggesting, hey, if you want to go to another part of the city or something, and we're like, no, we're here and let's stay here. We don't know what the big deal is. So, but we went to bed, and when we got up the next morning, we were very excited about exploring our new neighborhood, so to speak. And my new girlfriend at the time, she was excited to go down to the beach and to work on her tan. I, on the other hand, really, as you can tell, I'm not working on my tan. So the idea of going to sit in the sun and frying for hours on end was not something that was exciting to me. I didn't see the point of it. And also, I have very sensitive skin, and if it got burned, I would be itching like crazy. So it was not very attractive an option for me. So I told her, I said, well, let's just walk down to the beach and let's see how things are, and maybe we can stay for a few minutes. You can work on your tan a little bit, and then we can go somewhere else. So that's exactly what we did. We walked down to the beach, and when we got there, one of the things that the property manager told us at the hotel was that you have to stay within the designated area where the hotel owned that beach. In other words, each hotel owned the beach in front of their property at the time. I don't know if they physically own it or it was just designated as their area. I felt like they actually outright owned that area in front of their beach. And when I got out there, it was roped off completely, so you had to show your pass or your wristband or something in order to be able to have access to get onto the beach. And when I got there, I was completely blown away because it was like sardines packed on a beach. The beach was absolutely packed in this area for the hotel. And in fact, there are other hotels that were next door just to this place that had less people. But you were forced to stay in this area where the hotel was, and it was just packed like sardines. And it was so strange to me because I'd never seen that many men congregated on one beach in one spot. It was just like looking at a bunch of walrus laying on the beach out there. It was so strange to me. And so when I got there, we had to try to find a spot on the beach, and we're looking around, and this guy saw us. There was a couple guys there, about 2 or 3 guys, and they motioned to my girlfriend and I to come on over, here's a spot. So we went over and we thanked them and we introduced ourselves to them, and we started to talk with them. And it didn't take, within a very short period of talking to this one guy, all of a sudden he mentioned, the size of his shoes. And if for those people who are from different countries that you don't know what the reference is, back in the 80s, a lot of people would reference that the size of their feet will determine the size of how large their dicks were. So he's trying to tell me while I'm there with my girl, essentially the size of his dick within just a few minutes of meeting these people. And it wasn't like I gave off any sense of I was interested in any way. He clearly knew. I introduced myself and said, this is my girlfriend. Clearly, he had to have known. And if he didn't know, well, at some point during the conversation, it should have became very clear to him. So we kept on talking. I kind of ignored it. And he brought it up a second time, and I kind of ignored it. And by the third time, I was thoroughly annoyed. Like, what the fuck, man? I just, look, why do you have to do this? There's nobody else on the fucking beach that's doing this. It's just this one asshole that decided that he was going to be disrespectful to me. So I didn't say anything to him because what's the point? We just got there, so I just decided, you know what? Let's just politely exit the beach and move on to going around to explore. So shortly after that, we left and we went off to explore the rest of Puerto Vallarta to see the downtown area. So once we left the beach, we went off to explore Puerto Vallarta, that downtown area there. And it's a very beautiful town. It has cobblestone streets there, old architectural buildings there. It's just a beautiful town. It has a nice church down there. It's very old, but also just very well preserved. And there's lots of little shops and restaurants, etc. And as we walked around, going down the street and just making our way through the different areas and streets, people were very friendly to us. They kept on saying hello to us, good morning to us. And it was very nice just to to feel how friendly people were just interacting with us. And as we were out exploring, I found a gym. And I was like, cool, we found a gym. So I'm like, maybe tomorrow you can go work on your tan and I'll just go by the gym and do a quick workout, and then we can start our day that way. So the next day, got up early. I went off to the gym to do my workout. It was sort of a outdoors gym, so it was beautiful. I was enjoying the weather. It was close to the views there. It was just beautiful. And while I was doing my workout, my girl was down at the beach and she was working on her tan down there. And so that's kind of cool. I went and I picked her up, and then we decided to go walking through the streets again, exploring. And as I kept on walking around, I started to notice something, that the people the day before that were saying good morning to us, and most of the people that were saying good morning to us turned out to be a lot of guys, a lot of young guys. And they kept on, I started to notice that they're not really saying hello to me or good morning to me. They were saying hello to my girlfriend mostly, and seemed to be centrally focused on her. I wasn't surprised by that because she was the 50-mile ultra running champion at the time, and she was in phenomenal shape. She was a beautiful woman, the type of woman that if she walked into a room, like you see in some of those movies when that 10 or 12, ranked woman walk into the room and she's just a head turner that everybody stop and the music stop when she walks into the room. That's how beautiful she was. She was very beautiful, so it was difficult for her not to be noticed when she walked into a room or walked down the street. However, it just became, I was used to having a pretty girl and used to getting attention, because when I started to work out years gone by, there weren't many people working out at the time, and I was larger than life and in really good shape. So I was used to people, maybe giving me a compliment or waiting until you walked away and then maybe check you out and point to a friend or something like that. So there was nothing unusual about that. I expected her to have way more compliments than I did because she's a beautiful woman. But what I noticed was that they were completely ignoring me, which I didn't give a shit about. But it wasn't like good morning anymore. It was like, hello, beautiful. Hey, beautiful. Hey, baby. Hey, gorgeous. What's your name? Things like that came off a little cringy, like, wait a minute here. You are kind of hitting on my girl in front of me. And it was, after a while, it wasn't like it was like one person or two people, etc. It was a lot of people doing it. It seemed like it happened just about every damn street that we went on. If you felt like you were getting harassed. I realized in that moment that I know what Sean Penn felt like when he was dating Madonna, the singer, back in the 80s. I don't know if you guys know this, but back years gone by, Sean Penn, the actor, was dating Madonna, and he would always get in fights with people, beating up people, etc., because Madonna was getting so much attention. Well, this was a little different because I didn't give a shit about that. I was not insecure. It was just that they were being overly aggressive in a way that I'd never seen before, and it was very uncomfortable for me. So by the next day, after working out, I decided, we had already agreed to that I'd pick up my girlfriend down at the beach where she was working on her tan. And so I got there, and she's like, come on over for a second. So I went over there, and I didn't really want to sit there because she was sitting with that guy talking with him. But I'm like, well, that was a couple days ago. Just let it go, and hopefully, things will be better today. But it didn't take more than about 3 to 5 minutes into the conversation, and again, he started to mention his shoes again, the size of his shoes to me again. And finally, I just looked at him and I just said, look. And I put a smile on my face and just kind of, because sometimes humor goes a long way. And so I was assertive with a little bit of humor. And I said, enough of the shoe thing already. I get it. You say you think you got a big dick. Now, can we move on from that? And then I said, and before he could answer, I say, so how did you have you been coming to Puerto Vallarta a long time? And, how did you ever find this hotel? What I was trying to do is to change the subject away from what he was trying to veer the conversation to, and I was successful in doing that. And so after talking to him for a period of time, him and his friends that were there, after probably a few minutes, and when I asked him that question about how did he find the hotel, he says, well, this is not the first hotel that I've stayed in since I got here. He said, in fact, I got kicked out of the previous hotel before. And I said, well, why did you get kicked out of the first hotel? He goes, well, because they said I was trying to bring an underage kid in here, an underage boy in here, and it was against their policy, and I was just fucking pissed at them. I got in a big argument with the manager, and I just told them to go fuck themselves. And then I just said, give me back my fucking money. And then I just changed the hotel, and that's how I ended up in this hotel. And I was a little bit taken back by that, and to say the least, and I was like, wow, that's interesting. And so shortly after that, I exited that conversation, and then we sort of left the beach there and went on about our day. Once we left the beach, I started to talk to my girlfriend about what had happened just now and what that guy said to us. And I said, that guy's beginning to really weird me out. I said, it was one thing about him harassing me, but I thought through that and I realized, look, you are in the so-called gay hotel, you're on a gay beach, what the fuck did you expect? Okay, you're an alpha male, you like to hunt women when in general, so what would be any different for him if he's a guy and he sees you and he's interested? He's gonna be just as aggressive as well. So, so get over it. You went into his territory, so you shouldn't be so uptight about it. If you don't like it, then just don't fucking go back there. So I kind of gave myself an attitude adjustment about that. But when that situation happened, I said to her, I said, look, there's something creepy and weird about that fucking guy. I said, beyond him hitting on me, I said, now it sounds like he's a fucking child molester. I said, it must have been pretty serious, and the boy must have been pretty young for the hotel to even notice that the boy was young enough to even approach him to tell him that it was not okay for him to bring that kid into the hotel. And clearly, hotels want to make money, so this kid must have been pretty fucking young that he was trying to get in there. So I just said to her, I said, look, that guy's a fucking weirdo. I really don't like hanging around him. And so she turned around and she says, you just don't like him. That's why you're saying that. She's like, and you don't seem to be very friendly with people either. People are saying hello to us, and you don't seem to be saying hello back to them or being friendly. And I said, well, so when she said that to me, I disagreed with her. We got in a little bit of tit for tat argument there, and then we left that alone and went on about our day. But I told her that I really wasn't interested in going down to the beach again to go pick her up, or at least I don't mind coming down there to pick her up, but I wasn't going to sit there and stay on the beach because I didn't want to be around that guy because he kind of creeped me out. As we started about our day and we started to walk back through the town again, the hellos and the harassment from the young men that were there just got worse and worse. It was like, hello, baby. Hey, beautiful. Hey, mama. While she's standing with me, while she's holding my hand. And some of the guys who had seen us a few times were coming over trying to hug her. And I don't mean like a little hug, but trying to hug her while I'm with her. And I'm sorry, but it's one thing in the culture I'm from for you to hug someone when you know them for a period of time. But it is a little strange to me for a stranger to come up and want to hug your woman and trying to fucking kiss her. Okay? And I just had to tell her, I said, look, I know we're in Mexico and I know that's a part of the culture, but that's a little weird. These guys are not saying hello because they want to be friendly. They're saying hello because they're trying to fuck you, okay? And I said, and right in front of me, I said, that's kind of fucking disrespectful at this point. We got into it a little bit more again. And then when we're down in the downtown area there, something really strange happened. A pickup truck pulled up and it had a bunch of guys on there with machine guns. And they just pointed, there were some white American kids that were there, both girls and boys there. And the guys just went, you, get in the truck now. And he's pointing to them and they had machine guns. And one of the girls went on there, and one of the guy and another girl went on there. And the kids at first, they're sitting there and they were puzzled, like looking at each other like they didn't have a fucking clue what this is about. It was, maybe they could have done something earlier, but they really had the deer in a headlight look, like they had no fucking idea what this was about and why they should get in this truck. And, there was no markings on the truck. You didn't know who they were. And they looked terrified as hell. And one girl started crying and they didn't know, where are you taking them? And they didn't say anything. and they just, and this is in the middle of the daytime. It wasn't like at night or something. It was in the middle of the day, about noontime, with lots of people around. And in that moment, they're like, get on the fucking truck. And then they just drove away, and the kids start screaming, and you can tell that they didn't know what was going on. And they're like, we should go get the police. They didn't know what was going on. And that situation freaked me out, because it felt like a movie scene where, typically fear of something happens in a horror movie late at night. Somebody, catches you in the alley or something, hit you over the head. They sneak up on you. That's the kind of fear you're kind of used to. Or you instigate something and something happen. But if you're around hundreds or thousands of people and you're walking around with lots of witnesses, and all of a sudden somebody can show up in the middle of that and kidnap you in front of everyone, that's scary as fuck. And it felt that way to me. I could be wrong, but holy shit, it just kind of freaked me the fuck out that could happen. The next day we got up early, and we sort of knew the routine at this point, that I was gonna go to the gym, she was gonna work on her tan down at the beach. But because we were bickering all along, and I didn't know this girl very well, I suggested to her, I said, look, why don't we go to one of the other beaches? I've seen lots of beaches that were not owned by the hotel, that you could just walk over and sit there. And instead of being on this one beach where it's overly packed and it has this kind of child molester guy on there that clearly I was not liking. But she refused, because she says, well, I kind of like that beach spot there. It's safe because the guys are not going to hit on me, and I can talk to someone while you're at the gym. And I said, well, I don't have to go to the gym. She says, well, I still want to go work on my tan. So why don't you just go? And when you come back, you don't have to stop by and sit there. You can just come by and just wave to me, and I'll just get up and I'll come along with you. I said, sound like a plan. Went off and did my workout. And then I got back from my workout and I made eye contact with her, but I noticed that she was deep into a conversation, looked like she was having a good chat with the guys down there. And so I came over, and rather than her getting up, she's like, come on over here. Bruce, come on over here. Come sit for a minute. Just sit for a minute. Let's just talk for a few minutes. So I gave myself an attitude adjustment. I didn't want to be, an ogre. And plus she said to me that I was not being friendly. And so I thought, well, maybe I was being, insecure in some way. I didn't think I was, but I thought, well, I am on vacation and I need to find a way to adjust my attitude. So that's what I did. So I decided against my better judgment to try to put on a smile, even though the ogre, the Neanderthal in me was kind of grumpy about it, but I had a good attitude about it. And I sat there. And as I sat there and they were talking, that guy, he started talking. He said that, you'd never believe what happened. And we're like, what happened? He goes, they're trying to throw me out of this hotel too. And we're going, for what? You keep getting thrown out of these hotels. Like, what happened? He goes, for the same shit, man. They're trying to throw me out of the hotel again. They told me I had to leave because I'm bringing in minors in here and I'm not supposed to do it. He's like, what the fuck is what's wrong with these fucking people? He goes, I'm a teacher in California and it's the same shit happening there. I'm on the multiple investigation in California. They're talking about that I'm a fucking child molester. Can you believe that shit? And I was just completely floored by what I was hearing. And shortly after, and as he's talking, shortly after that, I just quickly, but politely found a way to exit the beach. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'm sorry that happened. So you're going to find another hotel? And he's like, yeah. And I was like thinking in my head, great, at least you won't be on this fucking beach anymore. So we left the beach and went back to the hotel. And when we got back to the hotel, we sat down and I said to my girlfriend, I said, look, something is wrong with this guy. I don't think you should be hanging out down there with him. It's very clear he's a child molester at this point. I mean, this is 3 situations. You have him being kicked out of 2 different hotels. He's being investigated in California. He said actively being investigated for child molestation. And he seems to have no remorse about being investigated. So you really might want to stay away from that guy. He's trouble. And when I said that to her, she's like, you can't tell me what to do. And she got angry and we got in our first fight. Okay, and remember, I met her recently, so I didn't know her very well. So we had our first fight and she's like, you're just insecure. You just don't like that guy. And you're just trying to find reason not for me to interact with him. I like going down to the beach, and she's arguing with me. And, the argument got so heated that she decided that she's going to move out and find another hotel room. And she did exactly that. She grabbed her things and she packed up and she left. And, I sat there that night and I was thinking, holy fuck, how did this thing go sideways? Something is clearly wrong with that situation with that guy, but I clearly didn't handle that very well if she's, moving out, etc. So, you're sitting there and you're questioning and you're doing a forensic on the conversation, trying to figure out how can you fix this, because as a guy, when you bring someone all the way to another country, or you go somewhere with a person all the way to another country, you feel a sense of responsibility for their safety while they're there. And so, she went off that night, found a hotel, and then as for me, I slept there. When I got up the next morning, I tried to contact her. I got no call back, no answers, and then finally, at some point, she answered the phone. And I felt like, Jesus, I fucked that situation up. I need to fix it. So she agreed that she would make herself. So she agreed that we could talk for a few minutes, that she was on her way out to dinner. But if I wanted to meet her, sort of down on the cobblestone street somewhere, we can talk for a few minutes. And then later on, maybe we can talk the next morning about seeing, if we can make some progress. So, that was good enough for me. So I went down there, and when I got down there, she was with that fucking child molester guy. And that's who she was with, him and a couple other guys. And that's who she was going out to dinner with. And, you can imagine how pissed you would be about that situation. And it was very clear at that point that that guy did not like me. And it's very clear I didn't fucking like him. If I didn't like him at all at this point because of what I've heard. And also because she's kept on hanging out with him as well. So after seeing her with that guy, the child molester, and they were going off to dinner, I went back to my hotel. And that was the first time I really thought, somebody needs to kill this motherfucker. I mean, this dude is a bona fide child molester. He's bad fucking news. And I sat in the hotel, I'm thinking, I should fuck this guy up. And I thought, well, you keep hitting on me. Maybe I could get him to come back to the hotel. If I can get him to come back to the hotel, I'll just fuck him up at the hotel. But then I thought, well, he would scream. And then once he started screaming, then that would be problematic. Okay, then I'm thinking, well, maybe I could duct tape his mouth so that, nobody could hear him screaming. And then I was like, maybe I could kill him. And then I thought, well, if I kill him, then, I won't get away with that. I'm like, there's cameras still, at least security cameras. And then I thought, well, maybe I'll just beat the shit out of him. Okay, that might work. And then I thought, well, and then what? You're just going to leave him there? He's going to run out the door immediately. Then I thought, well, maybe if I tie him up and beat the shit out of him and leave him there, then maybe after a few hours, somebody will find him and they'll let him go. And then I thought, well, what if nobody comes and he sits there and he starves to death there? Then what? So I kept on, here's the thing about it. I'm sure if you're a murderer, then this is easy for you. But if you're not somebody who does bad things to people deliberately, doing those things, they're not as simple as you think. So it wasn't a part of my personality to do something like that. So it was fucking with me. And in the end, I decided not to do anything. So I decided to go for a walk that evening outside. And as I was walking around, kind of walking in the downtown area, it was kind of late out at this point. It felt like it was about 9 o'clock because it was dark out. some random guy comes up to me and he said the strangest fucking thing to me. He said, hey, he says, you looking for your girlfriend? And I go, what? He goes, they're trying to fuck your girlfriend. I go, what? He says, they're trying to fuck your girlfriend. She's in danger. You better go find her tonight, or you might not see her anymore. And I was like, what? I didn't even know how this guy knew me. I'd never seen him before. And I said, well, do you know where she is? And he goes, no, I don't know. She's down somewhere, and couldn't quite figure out what he was trying to say. And I asked him several times. It was unclear. He didn't know where she was, but he knew clearly that someone was trying to fuck my girlfriend. And I was like, that's fucking bizarre. So at first I'm thinking, whatever. So then I start to walk and I start thinking about it, and I go, that's fucking weird. I'm like, and once that's in your head now, I'm thinking, well, you know, it doesn't matter whether or not this woman wants to be with me or not. When I left from Hawaii with her, her family was aware that she left with me. They trusted me that I would keep their daughter safe. I have a moral responsibility as a man to make sure she's protected, even if she doesn't want to have shit to do with me afterwards. I didn't care about that. I just felt personally responsible from a human perspective to make sure that she was safe regardless of what her decisions were at all. And she was a tiny little thing. She was like 5 feet tall. So it's like, if something happened, somebody could just bop her over the head and drag her off somewhere. So now I was worried. And so I started to go from bar to bar, restaurant to restaurant, walking through. I must have took about 2 hours kind of combing through the city. Sort of felt very weird, almost like you're a crazy person just going into different places. And I got to this downtown area. And when I got there, where a lot of clubs were, I kind of went in and out of the different clubs and still feeling kind of odd and weird that I'm doing it. And then I just somehow randomly found this one club, and I went in there and I didn't see anyone in there. I walked around in there, and then a little voice says, well, why don't you go look in the back there? And when I went back there, shocking enough, she was sitting there, and she was sitting there with a guy. And the guy was one of the waiters from the hotel. And it was just the two of them sitting there. And I was just kind of blown away by that. So I went there and I just walked in and I just sat right in between them. Like they were facing each other, and I just sat facing that guy. And I looked at her and she's like, what are you doing here? And I just looked at him and I just said to him, I said, this ain't gonna fucking happen. This is not happening. You're not gonna fucking do that. I said, you can pick any other girl in the city that you wanna fuck, but it ain't gonna be her. And she's like, you're making a scene. And I said, look, just be quiet for a moment. I said, you're gonna have to decide I was talking to the guy and I say, you're gonna have to decide if this is worth it for you, because I'm prepared to die tonight. Are you prepared to die? Because I don't give a fuck if your friends come afterwards. One thing for sure is you're a dead motherfucker if you don't leave here. And he just got up and he left. And she's like, you're crazy. But then afterwards, as we're walking, I looked at her and I said, look, I don't give a fuck if you want to be with me or not. It's okay. I'm at peace with that. But you're not safe here. I'm being told that you're in danger here. You're not making good decisions. I said, you can leave tomorrow. We can be on the next plane tomorrow. And the very next day, you can come back on your own dime and do whatever the fuck you want to do. But this is not going to happen on my watch, that you're going to get disappeared here while you're with me. So I don't know if it was the right decision or not, but that's my decision, because I felt like morally responsible to make sure that she was safe. So we left there together and we went back to the house. Obviously she came back to my hotel with me because we started to talk as we were walking. And then she's like, she said to me, she says, that was really weird. I said, what happened to that Mr. Child Molester guy? She said, well, he took me to the bar. He said we had dinner, and then he took me to this bar here, and he said he was going to be right back, and then he disappeared, and he never came back. Like, in other words, it was a setup, because Mr. Child Molester disappeared and left them with that guy. And all of a sudden she was thinking to herself, well, this is not going to fucking happen. But here she was in a situation that she was over her head. And I think it might have happened. She might have gotten raped or worse. So, so we decided, we had a long talk about that. And so we decided, look, let's not have you go down to this beach anymore. We sort of resolved things. We had a long conversation, and she moved her things back in that evening, and that's how that day ended. So the next day we decided to go to a completely different beach, which is what I recommended from the very first time. And so when we got to that beach there, we met several other couples, and they seemed very normal. And so we had a pretty good time with them, and we started to talk to them and interact with them. And at some point, one of the couple, the husband and wife team that were there, the guy says, oh, he says, that's my sister. And I said, yeah. I said, how long she's been, I said, they look like a nice couple because she was with this guy. And he goes, oh, that's not her husband. He says, her husband is back in Canada, and she's actually cheating on him. And he said, you see the other woman over there, a friend? She's also cheating on her husband too. I go, you gotta be fucking kidding me. He says, no. He said, the thing is that a lot of these women come down on vacation and have affairs with the Mexican guys there. And I was saying, that's interesting. I said, yeah, because I've been noticing that they've been constantly hitting on my girl. He says, oh yeah. He says, the reason why they're doing that is because a lot of these young girls, they come down, they have boyfriends back home or boyfriends at the hotel, and they sneak off and fuck the local Mexican guys. And so after a while, after years of doing that, the local Mexican guys have gotten pretty bold now that they're literally trying to pick up your girl while they're on your arm. And I'm like, oh, so that's why they're being so disrespectful, because essentially, all the tourists create this culture to make it okay. And so, fuck, if you were there and you're a local and you know that these girls were just there and a lot of them would sneak off and want to fuck you, then, hey, why wouldn't you try? You'd get pretty ballsy. And that's exactly what they were doing. So after that, the next day, we went down to that beach again, and we were by ourselves, and we're just sitting there talking. And at some point, I told my girl, I said, boy, I'm really thirsty. And she says, oh, let me go grab a drink for both of us. So she took off, there was a store very, very close by. So she ran up to the store to grab something to drink. But after a while, I was noticing, I'm like, why the fuck is she taking so long? I mean, she's just got to get some water. A couple of bottles of water seemed to be taking an awful long time. So by the time I stood up, I saw her running and she's a runner. I saw her sprinting towards me with fear in her eyes. And I said, what happened? She clearly was shook up. I said, what happened? She's like, the guy. I said, what the guy? I said, slow down. Tell me what happened. She says, well, I went in and I got the bottle of waters. I got 2 bottles of water. And when I stepped out of the store, there was a guy kind of in an alleyway. There was some sort of a house with an alley right there. And there was a guy standing there. And he said to me, hey, come here. And I wasn't thinking. I went over to him and he grabbed my hand and started dragging me into the building, into the house. And he wouldn't let go. And she's like, I kind of fought him off and I ran. I ran as fast as he can. So when she said that, I ran over there and nothing. There was nobody there. She says, he's gone. And so that kind of creeped me out, like, holy shit, it can happen that quickly? This happened so quickly that you could be sitting on a beach and some shit like that could happen that quickly. Really sort of freaked me out. The next day, we were off somewhere and we decided we're not going to lay on the beach or anything like that. And we're walking around. But then she said that I went to the bathroom and I came out, and she said that she was standing there waiting for me, and that guy walked by her and was like, hey, baby, to her. And kept on walking, and it just freaked her out because it was almost like she was getting stalked. I'm sure it was coincidence why he saw her, but you never really know, because when I was in Hawaii, like I said in my Hawaiian adventure, when you work in a downtown area, you see the tourists 2 to 3 days before they start to even become acclimated enough to see you. So I felt really, really weirded out that this guy could have been watching us the entire time, and he's an opportunist, And I just decided, you know what? That's the last fucking straw. I'm done with Puerto Vallarta. They can go fuck themselves here. This is not fun anymore. I said, let's go to some other part of Mexico where we can have a good time. And so I talked to some of the people at the hotel about where else could we go visit. And they mentioned two places. They mentioned Guadalajara and Manzanillo. And they said a lot of wonderful things about Guadalajara. And so by the next day, boom, we were out of Puerto Vallarta and on our way to Guadalajara. So on our way to Guadalajara, we were like sort of halfway in between, because I think we took two buses or we took one bus. I don't remember. But what I do remember is that at the bus station, for whatever reason, I need to go to the bathroom. And for whatever reason, I didn't have any, I think I only had my card with me at that time. I don't remember. But one thing for sure, I didn't have any coins available or money to pay. And the only way you can use the toilet is that you had to pay for it. And I didn't have it. And it was the craziest thing. I'm like, what kind of a lack of humanity is this? That just to go to the bathroom, you have to pay. And if you can't pay, what the fuck are you supposed to do? If you wanted to go do number two, what the fuck? I mean, that's just so crazy. That should not happen anywhere, that somebody's holding your hostage like that. I mean, what are the fucking people supposed to do? Go in your pants? I mean, that's just bullshit. And it wasn't even a lot of money for them to do that. Certainly, if they wanted to find another way to make money, this should not be a way to make money. That's fucking inhuman. It was ridiculous. So I literally had to beg someone for the coin to put in there in order to use the bathroom. I just thought that was such bullshit. And then we got on the bus, and the ride was long, and it was a beautiful bus. It was a nice coach bus, but I get car sick a lot. And so being on this bus, it was long and a lot of twists and turns, and I should have known from the very beginning when I got on the bus, because they had the little paper bag, you know, those vomit bags that they give you. They were there and they were handed them out to people when you got on the bus. That should have been a hint. It was so bad on the bus. It's like you could smell the carbon monoxide on the bus, that at one point I looked at my girl and I was like, I just want to get off this bus. I can't stay on this bus anymore. I'm like, let's just get off and we'll get on another bus. And I literally, when the bus stopped and some people were getting off, I was like, come on, let's get off the bus. But then I looked outside and I look around, and it was absolutely desolate there. It was no sign. You didn't know where the fuck you were. If we had gotten off there, maybe we would have been fine and people would have been very kind to us, or maybe we would have been missing and nobody would ever hear from us ever again. It just looked like one of those spooky movie scenes that you didn't know where the fuck you were gonna go, so why the fuck would you get off there? It was a bad decision. And so we stayed, and I was nauseous, but I didn't throw up. And then finally, after some time, we got to Guadalajara. When we got to Guadalajara, it was late at night. And so the next day, the first thing I noticed about Guadalajara when we got there is at our hotel, they had an old style mechanical elevator. And so it wasn't like you push a button, you move these little levers and you just pull the lever. And somehow I pulled that lever, the pulley system that were there actually caused the elevator to move you from one floor to the next. But it was done with minimum effort. The mechanics of it was so well done that it didn't take a lot of energy to do it. And I thought to myself, I'm like, what the fuck? This thing doesn't even use electricity. Why don't they do this everywhere? Because certainly it didn't take a lot of power to move it, and it was just a hand crank and you were there. It was just really easy and very, very well done. And it was sort of the early version of an elevator, and it was sort of probably the higher end early version of an elevator using the mechanical principles. So when we got downstairs and decided to go explore, first of all, the first thing I noticed, people were not bothering you. Nobody was trying to sell you anything, which happened a lot in Puerto Vallarta. In Puerto Vallarta, if you made eye contact with anyone, even on the beach, if you're sitting there, if you make eye contact, someone would run over and try to sell you something. You could not relax when you're there because you were constantly being bombarded with somebody trying to sell you something. I know that they're trying to make a living, but it was a bit much. People were just chill. And they told me, one person told me, they're like, we don't get a lot of Americans who venture this far down here. And people were just living their lives, and it was just really nice to be insignificant, to not have anybody give a shit about you. If you walk by, you make eye contact, somebody would say good morning to you, but otherwise they left you alone and you did your thing. We had some really good, authentic food. I could see people in their natural habitat doing what they do. It was just sort of like being a fly on the wall, and it was just awesome to be there. And then when we went around this area where they told us, you can go to the markets. And so when we went to the market area, I was just blown away. I'd never seen anything like this before. It was like they had a street that just had, it almost seemed like they only sold makeup, like women makeup on that street. Like, it's sort of like if you're in New Orleans on Bourbon Street and the streets are that long and they sell only makeup on one street. And then the next street over, it looks like they sold only wedding dress. I mean, back in Boston, I remember friends getting married and they would have to make appointments to go to the bridal shop, and there would only be a few bridal shops. But yet, there in Guadalajara, you had, dozens and dozens and dozens of wedding dress shops along the way. And I'm sure they were doing that because of when you turn 15 years old, you'd have those pretty dresses on. But still, I'd never seen that many of it. And as I continued to go from street to street, the thing the conclusion that I got to was, all this messaging that we get about Mexico on the US mainland, about how they're struggling and how somehow there's something wrong with their culture, I'm like, that messaging is just completely fucking wrong. These people were living better lives than we were living. They had access to stuff that we didn't have access to. They had more stores with more options than we did. And it was just amazing to see the bustling culture and how people were just living this beautiful life there. And none of this messaging was getting back to the US mainland at the time. And so the people were wonderful, friendly, and the food was awesome, and we thoroughly enjoyed ourselves. And then we left from Guadalajara and we went to Manzanillo. And when we got to Manzanillo, we're in this old town. And I don't know how old it was, but it sort of felt like antique, because it looks like it was a throwback to the 1920s or the 1950s, the architecture of the hotel. It looks like something straight out of a movie. Just the way that the architecture of the building was, and inside of it, and the paint and the stairwells. It's almost like, they preserve everything about it. And it was just a unique place to be, and we thoroughly enjoyed it as well. And then we made our way back to Puerto Vallarta, and we spent basically one night there, and then we're on a plane and we left. And so that's my adventure in Mexico. And don't forget, folks, to subscribe to my channel, download my app, and again, check out some of my workouts when you download my app. And don't forget that I have helped thousands of people to lose weight and get in the best shape of their life. My name is Bruce Wayne, and thank you for watching, and see you on the next episode.